Hello everybody and welcome to the Thursday edition of Video Clips. Just a couple of announcements. Next Monday, Chef Del will do conversations with Chef Del. He's a celebrity Chef Del, we should call him. I have to tell you this, I think it's so cool. Last week, his book was ahead of 50 Shades of Grey on the Amazon list. I think we are making progress when plant-based cookbooks are selling better than books like 50 Shades of Grey. But anyway, Monday, March 18th is your chance to listen to Chef Del talk about spring soups, and you can bring all your food and cooking related questions to him too. And then March 20th is the next Wellness 101 Intro to Plant-Based Nutrition conference call. So if you haven't done one of those yet, it's just a great 90-minute, get all your questions answered, get started converting to the right diet. Do it right. Most people who do this by themselves don't do a very good job. All right. I have picked two topics today to talk about. One is kind of amazing, and it has to do with the Gardasil vaccine. I've been advising parents to not let their daughters get vaccinated with Gardasil. It's been misrepresented as a preventative tool for cervical cancer. It isn't. Nobody knows how long it lasts. The side effects are significant. Dozens of girls have died. And I found it very interesting. A doctor, her name is Dr. Diane Harper, spoke to CBS News about some of her concerns about Gardasil. What makes this interesting is that she helped to design and conduct the phase 2 and 3 studies on safety and efficacy that resulted in the vaccine's approval. She was a former paid speaker and consultant to Merck, the maker of the drug. And so for her to come forward and talk about this is really unusual. So she has several concerns, and the first is how long the vaccine lasts. She says the data shows it only lasts for 5 years, which means that the Centers for Disease Control's recommendations to give this vaccine to 11-year-olds is actually very misguided. And this was her quote: "If we vaccinate 11-year-olds and the protection doesn't last, we've put them at harm from side effects which are small but real, with actually no benefit. The benefit to public health is nothing. There's no reduction in cervical cancers. They are just postponed unless the protection lasts for 15 years or longer, and we could get a 70% penetration." So what she's basically saying, unless the vaccine lasts longer than what it's been proven to last, it really doesn't matter. This is a useless tool for 11-year-old girls. She's also concerned about the side effects, and she says that the number of adverse event reports indicating serious reactions is such that the vaccine may be riskier than the cervical cancer it's supposed to prevent. And this is particularly true because as much as you hear me rant and rave about the uselessness of diagnostic testing, one test that actually is effective is the Pap test to detect cervical cancer at a stage when it's almost always curable. And in fact, piggybacking on this idea, the CBS News article also included a reference to a previous interview with Dr. Scott Ratner and his wife, both doctors who are speaking out against Gardasil because one of their daughters became extremely ill after her first dose of the vaccine. Ratner told CBS that she would have been better off with cervical cancer than getting the vaccine. And this was his direct quote: "My daughter went from a varsity lacrosse player at Choate to a chronically ill, steroid-dependent patient with autoimmune myofasciitis. I've had to ask myself why I let my eldest of 3 daughters get an unproven vaccine against a few strains of a non-lethal virus that can be dealt with in more effective ways." I couldn't have said it better. Merck and the CDC, however, continue to insist that Gardasil is safe and effective. And of course, you can insist anything if you don't have to prove it. I mean, if I sat here and just made stuff up, it would be easier, number one, and I could insist anything. And also, these people never have to face the consequences of the bad advice that they give people, and that makes me angry. So the CDC and Merck claim that they're monitoring adverse side effects and keeping very careful track. I don't really see any evidence of that. The vaccine's still on the market. Dr. Harper says that the risk of serious events, including death as a result of Gardasil, are about the same as the risk of death from cervical cancer. And one article in the Journal of the American Medical Association determined the incidence of adverse events, but Dr. Harper read that study and reported to CBS that it was probably inaccurate because it was based on the number of doses of the vaccine in Merck's warehouse. But if you took that into consideration, she thinks the serious adverse events are actually 5 times higher than what has been reported. Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's unusual for somebody who's been on the payroll to speak out in quite this way. But Harper still doesn't say the vaccine's useless or nobody should get it. She actually kind of comes from the same standpoint that I do about a lot of things. She just thinks that people aren't being properly informed and warned so that they can make good decisions. And she does say that the vaccine may not last long enough to provide any prevention for cervical cancer, and that the risks of the vaccine may be greater than or equal to the risks associated with cervical cancer. One last thing that she points out, and I think this is a very real issue, and that is the false sense of security that some people may be getting because they got free doses of the vaccine through public health authorities or paid for by their insurance companies. And even the Congress of Obstetrics and Gynecology, I think I said that right, basically says that having this vaccine doesn't doesn't reduce the need at all for Pap smears. But we may have women who decide that they don't need to have the Pap test done on a regular basis because of the vaccine. And she said, this is a quote, the most costly public health experiment in cancer control will have failed miserably if it turns out that the cancer rate actually goes up because of less screening diligence due to the false sense of security brought about by the vaccine. So very interesting. The woman who conducted the phase 2 and 3 trials to get this vaccine approved, really, she and I have the same idea about this. All right, so now we'll talk about another dreadful situation. Every once in a while I try to throw in the good news, like the day I reported on the Japanese school lunch program. That was happy news, right? I guess this week it's all gloom and doom, taking apart the myths and reporting on the bad stuff. But anyway, let's talk about bariatric surgery. The incidence of it is increasing, by the way. And the arguments is that it not only helps people to lose weight, but it reduces the incidence of diseases like diabetes associated with being obese. And I've argued against it for such a long time. Diet and lifestyle are better choices. But I've also warned people about the risks associated with the surgery itself. And a new study confirms this. It was done the study was actually conducted with 29,820 adults who had the surgery, who were insured by Blue Cross Blue Shield. And the time period was 2002 to 2008, fairly recent. And each one of these people was matched with a control who didn't have the surgery but was diagnosed with the things that you can expect obese people to be diagnosed with: hypertension, type 2 diabetes, sleep apnea, metabolic syndrome, gallbladder disease. Total cost for health care were about the same for both groups. $29,517 is what the surgery plus follow-up care costs. Now, the costs were the same, but the amount of the costs were the same, but what the money was spent on was different. For example, hospitalization costs were higher for the people who had the surgery. And I'm not talking about hospitalization for the surgery. I'm talking about hospitalizations after the surgery, which means that those situations must have been far more severe because the people had to be hospitalized. An editorial in the same journal in which this article appeared was written by the Journal of the American Medical Association deputy editor. His name is Dr. Edward Livingston. Here's what he said. Accumulating evidence suggests that there's no economic benefit for weight loss surgery. Bariatric surgery has dramatic short-term results, but on a population level, its outcomes are far less impressive. And he went on to say current data suggests that weight loss operations should only be offered to a highly selected group of patients. And I find that interesting because some doctors are really pushing the idea that this is what we should be doing with teenagers now. According to pediatric surgeon Dr. Thomas Inga of the Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, he says, one of my messages, this is a direct quote, is that if we can operate on teenagers at a critical time when they have severe insulin resistance but have not yet developed diabetes, my prediction is we'll cut down on these other things developing. Can you believe that? Physicians said that. We can use bariatric surgery as a prophylactic. And this whole thing just makes me feel sad. I mean, it makes me feel sad that people are so desperate to lose weight, and the advice that they've been given is so awful that they're willing to have this barbaric surgery. And I'm particularly sad that the medical profession has thrown up its hands and does not try, and I mean it, they don't even try to teach people the right diet. They don't know what the right diet is. I mean, my gosh, Tuesday we were talking about how geeked up they are about nuts and olive oil. So anyway, if you know anybody who's thinking of having this dreadful, dreadful surgery, This article will be posted in the Health Briefs online library within the next 24 hours. You might want to fetch it and give it to them. And of course, you can fetch the articles on the Mediterranean diet and all the other cool stuff that we talk about on video clips in the library too. All right, that's all for this week. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you again on Tuesday.